Yeah. So yesterday I said that, so whenever you create a Synapse workspace, so by default, a serverless pool called built-in will be created, right? So how many how many pools are there? We have SQL pool, Apache Spark pool, usually in the Synapse workspace, and in the SQL pool we can create a dedicated SQL pool, which is nothing but a Azure data warehouse, and as well as we can use a serverless SQL pool to query the data which is there in your storage location. So basically, as I mentioned, usually we use serverless SQL pool to query the data, right? Let us query a data and see how does it goes. Opening. So open a SQL pool and we have data tab. So in the data place, what do we have? We have workspace and linked. Workspace in the sense the actual databases which we do, okay, and the linked over here. All right. So linked will have what? Linked will have ADLS which we have created, which we have mentioned while creating the Synapse workspace. So if you remember that yesterday we give this ADLS PCD Synapse workspace, and the user file system is the one which I give. Okay, I think I created again. I deleted yesterday one, I created again. Okay, so what I've done is I uploaded a Parquet file. Okay, I uploaded a Parquet file. Okay, yesterday evening I did this. Okay, I uploaded a Parquet file. So what is a Parquet file which I mentioned yesterday? Parquet, what is the Parquet format? What is the advantage of the Parquet format?
It stores the data in columnar format.
Yes, it stores the data in the column store format, and apart from that, it has high level of compression. Yeah, compression system. So it's easy to read, and also it occupies very less storage compared to other formats. So that is the reason in big data, in modern data world, almost all the applications uses the Parquet format. So I have one such file, Parquet file, which have uploaded here. Okay, uploaded here, and see, and I'll go to the develop. I created some of the sample queries which I'll show you here. Okay, now here let me show you that storage account. Sorry, it is Synapse workspace. So we have this file. Okay, so the account is PCD Synapse workspace is the account, and what is the container in this user file system? Okay, so this while creating Synapse workspace, it asks as a file system. So because why it asks as file system, this acts as a file system for whatever the objects will be creating, usually in the Spark. Okay, we'll see that. So this is the one, and this is a workspace. We have database, and here what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to read the data.
So whatever the storage accounts we created with Gen2, those appear here in this dropdown.
Yes. No. The whatever the Gen2 which we create as part of the Synapse workspace. If you remember that while creating Synapse workspace, it's asking for Gen2 account.
Yes.
Okay, that will be displayed over here. So we have only one. We create only one, right? So that comes over here. It's basically used for storing the data intermediately. Otherwise, even it helps me to store all the data, whichever is to read the data. To store the files in the pool. So in Apache Spark pool, whatever the data we are creating, this works as a storage for that. Okay. And one more thing, here it's not a mandatory thing that you should read only these files, okay? Because we are using the Synapse workspace, I wanted to show over here. Otherwise, you can even create, you can read the data from any of the storage account. Okay, in the within the Azure environment, whatever the storage account we have, we can read any data over here. I'll show you that. All right. Now see here what I've done. So this is the file. This is the container name. Sorry, this is the account name which have, and this is the container name which I have, and this is the file name which I have. It's very simple. See here, select star from the table. That's it. The only thing is that instead of the table, we are using something called open row set. Okay, and specifying the format and specifying the location. That's it. Then you can go ahead and read the data. All right. And if you see here, how I'm operating this, I'm operating with this built-in SQL pool. Right? What is built-in SQL pool? What is built-in SQL pool over here? I was saying that, right? Built-in SQL pool is serverless SQL pool. Okay, built-in is serverless SQL pool, which would be created by default along with the Synapse workspace. Even though you don't give anything explicitly, it by default creates a serverless pool called built-in. Okay, and in the serverless pool, you have a database, master database, of course, like by default works database you have. Now here I'm trying to read this here. Getting? Now see here, run.
The sample query is written by you, Purushottam, or it's an...
No, it's written by me.
Okay.
So in the same way, you can create, you can, there are tons of files would be available online. So you can upload a file and you can read it. Okay. Now see here, so it has all the files, all this data, data ID, middle ID, pickup time, drop time. It's basically a trip one, pickup long. So it's a cab services which it has. So cab services, the data is there. So why I took this NYC is usually like in most of the examples, in most of the applications, for sample, we use this NYC trip small. So even we'll use in the Databricks also, we'll try to use this. Okay. It has a good amount of data actually. So see here, so date, ID, pickup time, drop time. So it usually it's a cab services file. Okay. So using just open row set, I can get the data. So how do you get the data from storage while reading the data in the SQL pool? So we use open row set. All right. Are you with me?
Yeah. How do you write this? I mean, is there any like? I mean, did you right click on the file and?
Oh, okay. Sorry. No, yesterday I was showing that, right? So how do you create the query in the develop environment? We have something called SQL script and folder and all. So in the develop environment, what is the develop? As I was saying, in the develop, so we have data, develop, integrate, monitor, manage. So data is the one where actually all the data resides, and develop is the one where you develop a notebook, a data flow, or SQL script.
Okay.
So you might forget it. So you can create a SQL script, same like in SSMS you do, right? So
Yeah.
I just say click on SQL script and write the query. That's it.
Okay.
I just saved it. I published it to show you that.
Okay.
Same thing like you publish it. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. Now see here, apart from this, yeah.
I have one question.
Yeah.
So if suppose if we create one SQL Server database here, Azure, and in that we create one of the table and we inserted some of the record here in Azure portal.
Yes.
And later, suppose we are connected using the server name to our SSMS.
Yes, you can create.
And in that we are created another some table and we are inserted some of the records over there.
Yes.
So that will be replicated here as well, right?
You're talking about Azure SQL, right? Or this one? Yes, of course. Of course, that is the advantage, right? So
No,
it's
Azure portal, we are created
yes,
tables, we are
yes, I
inserted.
got your saying. So
Uh,
so what you're saying that we created a SQL database and you
uh,
connected with the
SSMS.
SSMS. So that's what
Uh,
we did, right, earlier in the while talking about Azure SQL. So in the ADF, using ADF, we created a table within the SSMS. Okay, and we inserted the data and we could see that, right? So yeah, we can do that.
uh,
So it's,
uh.
see, the server is still there only, right? The server is in the Azure, and we are just connecting to that server and we are doing all the operations. So obviously, whatever the operations that you perform, that will be stored in the cloud only.
So they both of them are sync.
No,
Uh,
there is no concept of
yeah.
sync itself. You are connected to only that server. Same like in on-premise, what you do. So your server is somewhere in the one of the on-premise
Correct.
location, and you are connected to that in SSMS. Okay, and one more guy connected with another
Correct.
location to the same server. So there is no concept of sync. You are using the same server, right?
Okay. Okay.
Got it? What
Okay.
I'm trying to say?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Is there any limit in size in the, I mean, serverless spool? Like, I mean,
Uh,
any
see.
storage space limit?
Yeah, you good question. Okay, but it is a wrong question. So what is serverless pool? What is serverless? It doesn't have any storage, right?
Yes.
So you don't store it. You don't store any data in serverless. You just use that to read the data. That's it.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Yesterday I was saying that, right? So serverless pool and dedicated SQL pool. In serverless pool, basically you use only to read the data. Let me show you that. What is there? Where is that?
Used for data preparation or ad hoc.
Yeah, use it for data preparation, ad hoc queries against unstructured data, provides an always available SQL endpoint for unplanned workloads, enables interactive querying. So use only for querying the data, whatever the read data or prepare the data, but
Yeah,
you're not
yeah.
going to store anything.
So the storage limit is based on the Azure, I mean, Gen 2 Synapse account.
No, see why you're using SQL pool. Say suppose you have some
Just,
data, you have some data in your storage, ADLS or blob something, you
yeah.
want to read that, then you will use the serverless pool only to read the data which I have done just now, like the New York trips data is there, right? So
Yes.
I'm reading the data. So the amount of cost which is costing would be depends on how much data you're reading, how much resources that you're using. The computation will be done, the costing will be done based on that, but there won't be any cost associated with the storage because now you're not storing any storage at all.
Yeah, got it.
Getting what I'm trying to say, so that you should understand the basics. So serverless means there is no server. The name itself specifies that there is no server,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Yeah. So let me come back to this Synapse workspace. And as I mentioned, the Synapse workspace started evaluating only just last 1 year. That's it. Before that, there is no, it was in preview edition only. Okay, it started recently. And that is how the Microsoft added this as part of DP203. Okay, and majority of the questions that started turning towards Synapse now. Okay, and it's because of this architecture in the dedicated SQL pool, and it's of a complete suite where everything is available in a single place, it's promoting highly. Okay, so going forward in next 1 or 2 years, okay, you will see most of the requirement based on the Synapse. Getting? Yeah. So you read this and you just read that. All right, you just read that and did this. Okay, but what do you, in which database you executed this? Master database. So even though you don't have any explicit database, okay, and even though you did not create any explicit SQL pool, Still, you can query the data with the default SQL pool, with the default database, which is created along with the Synapse workspace. Getting what I'm trying to say? So you don't need any database to read the data, because by default, a master database will be there, obviously, along with the built-in serverless SQL pool. Getting? But sometimes I might need a database to organize the data. Say suppose this is there. Okay, this is there, New York trip small parquet, which I have created over here. All right, but sometimes I might need to read this data at regular intervals. Okay, and I might need to read this data and copy the data into some other location. Okay, I might need to perform so many operations on this. Okay, while reading the data, I want to read the data, I want to query the data, I want to read this data and store it in some other database, right, at regular intervals. But at the time, each and every time, you may not write this all this, right, each and every time select query, you might not read that. Okay, at the time, what I can do is, there is something called concept called external table. Okay, so that time you can create external table on top of a file on the storage account. Okay, then you start reading the data in the storage account using that external table. All right, now see here, I created one more database. Okay, so I, like in the same SSMS, in the same database, you can create a database as well in the master database. I created a master database here, so I can
also serverless. I mean,
of course,
databaseless.
of course. So see here, I created a database, and that you need to remember that while creating a database here, I used a UTF-8 collate, because it helps to read the data very quickly. Okay, because of this internal mechanism, because of this internal collate, so it helps to read the data very quickly. So that is the reason we use UTF-8 collate while creating a database. Okay, while creating the database. Now see here, what I'm trying to do here, it's very simple. You just ignore this, which I created yesterday. So what I've done is, whatever the storage we have, you have one storage, right? Where does it come? Okay, here we have a storage. So what I'm trying to do is, I am creating something called data source, which points to this location. Okay, I'm saying that instead of each and every time writing all this big path, I'm saying that, hey man, there is something called a data source which I've created, which points to this ADL location and this container, this file name. Okay, so there is something called a concept called data source, through which you can create a source. Okay, which creates a link. So it's something called a link. Okay, so here what I'm doing here, create external data source. Trips data is the source name which I've done, with location. So this is a syntax actually. So what is the location over here? This is the location. See here, PCD Synapse workspace. So I gave the earlier one. So what I can do, so whatever the location we have, PCD Synapse space, that you can go over here. Then you create the workspace over here. You can create the trips data over here. Getting, you can create the data source here. Now I created the data source here. So what I'm seeing here I can directly read the data with the same open row set with the bulk, that means the actual location of the file. Okay, then the data source over here. Okay, what is the data source here? This one, which points to this particular location. And what is the format of the data? Parquet format. Getting? So this is about the external data source. So usually you can create external data source directly, and you can navigate to the same data with this trips data not found. Oh, sorry. So I created that external data source in the this one. So you can use that. Okay, already existing. Sorry. Okay, whatever the data is available, that will come over here. Are you with me?
Yes.
Yes, Purushottam. So you created an external table and
Yes. So I did not create an external table. I just try to show you how to create a data source. Okay, how to create a data source so that it will permanently points to a particular location. From that time, then I can start reading the data. Say, suppose this location, this external data source points to this particular Synapse CPDE. Okay, so I'm trying to read the data from this container. Next time, what I can do, I can read the data from another container. Next time I can do read the data from another file which is there in another container. Okay, just I need to mention the data source and format. That's it. Okay, sometimes the data can be a CSV. So what you'll do, you'll say format CSV and data source is trips data and the file name. Getting what I'm trying to say? And this data source I created in the data exploration DB. I created something called data exploration DB and I used that.
where is the user you are using? I mean, data analyst user you
No,
use.
I'm not using that. This is for another purpose I created. Just ignore this. Okay. And 1 second. So in the workspace, we have this DB, and here, whatever the source I created, that will come over here, external data source. Okay, what is the external data source I created? Trips data is the one which I created, data source. So give me a minute, there is some issue with my mouse. 1 second. Let me see that. Fine. So whatever the external in the DB, you can see here external tables, external resources, views, schemas, security that you can do in the serverless SQL database. And here in external data source, something called external data source, external file format that we'll see here. What is the use of that external files and all. So let us see. Yeah.
So Purushottam, so whatever the location you mentioned here in a data source, so that is the generated when we are creating the Synapse analytics, the server name or something like this. That the same thing you copied here, right?
Yeah, the same thing you copied, or you can read any data. I'm saying you can read any. Say, suppose you created one storage account in your workspace. Okay, you pasted some file over there. You can use that as well here.
Okay.
So basically, serverless pool, through serverless pool, you can read the data, anything which is available in any part of the world in the storage account. Okay, as long as you have the access, you can read the data. Simple. Getting?
Yes, yes, yes.
Say, suppose I can create a storage account over here. Okay, new storage account. I can upload some files over there and I can read the data here. Okay, are you with me, all of you?
Yes.
Raju, Ram, are you with me?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. So yeah.
One more confusion.
Yes,
So
yes.
we have to create a storage account in Synapse Analytics itself, and that location itself we are putting here. But if we use some other database, I
No,
mean
no,
to
no,
say
no.
suppose SQL or something, so we can't use here,
No,
right?
of course, right? So that SQL
Huh.
is different where you will use
Huh.
for all your storage SQL operations. But here, this pool is named as itself analytical pool, analytics pool. Okay, which used to read the data, which you analyze the data. It's all of analytics. Okay,
Okay.
you cannot do that. I got your question. That is different entirely. That SQL, Azure SQL is different from the analytical SQL pool which are available in the Synapse. Don't get
Yes.
confused. Both does
Yes.
not have any relation along with between them. Okay,
It's like
both are
Yes.
ADA scoring for only for.
yes, yes. See, Azure SQL is the one which you use to create the databases or create your tables or your database objects to perform various operations, right? And whereas Synapse SQL pools are used to create, analyze the data, read the data, or create a data warehouse using the dedicated SQL pools.
Okay. Yeah.
Getting? So you
Yes.
have totally three types of databases, I can say. Two types of databases. One is the SQL pool, Azure SQL. Okay, one is the actual SQL. Then in the Synapse, we have dedicated SQL pool, serverless SQL pool. And even within the Azure SQL also, we have single database and you have elastic pool database, if you remember that.
Correct.
And here we have serverless SQL pool, dedicated SQL pool. Serverless SQL pool usually used to read the data which is available in the storage location, whether it is a blob or whether it is a ADLS gen. Okay. And in the serverless SQL pool, there is, as name itself specifies, there is no server, only you just read the data. But still you can create the databases to create your database objects to manage all your queries and analytics. All right. And apart from that, the cost associated with the serverless SQL pool purely depends upon the amount of compute resources that use to read the data, but not for storage the data, because we are not storing the data anywhere in the serverless SQL pool. All right. And by default, there is something called built-in serverless SQL pool will be created whenever you create Synapse Workspace. All right. And whenever you're creating a whenever you're creating a database in the serverless SQL pool, so you should use UTF-8 for better reading capacity.
Hmm.
Getting? Are you with me?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Now let us see what are the external tables. Why do we use that? Okay, so I think I lost one slide, unfortunately. That's fine. See, let's see what is external table. Okay, so as I was saying, we use serverless SQL pool to read the data. Okay, to read the data which is available in your storage account. Okay, so the same thing it does here. External table. External table points to data located in Hadoop, Azure storage blob, or else storage located storage. Okay, so external tables are used to read the data from files or write the data to files in Azure storage. So basically what you're trying to do is, so basically it reads the data from the files, or I can write the data to the files using external tables. So basically it's a logical table. Okay, external table is not a physical table, it's a logical table which points to your data which is available you are in ADLS or a blob, right? So you can create external table either in the dedicated SQL pool or serverless SQL pool. We'll see why do we need in dedicated SQL as well. But here you just remember that, just let us focus on serverless SQL pool for today. And here, what is the advantage? I was saying query Azure Blob Storage or Azure Data Gen 2 with transact SQL statements. So whatever the SQL statements that you use, okay, whatever SQL statement like querying the data, joins and all you can do using external table. So that means you have two files. Okay, you have employee file, department file. Okay, you can do this exercise today. So we have employee table and department table. Okay, and two files are there. You can create external table on top of employee table. You create a external table on top of department table. Then you can write the queries and you can join them and you can perform the same set of operations that usually you perform on the database. Okay, and store query results to files in Azure Blob Storage and Azure Data Lake Storage using CTAS. We'll see CTAS, what is CTAS, which is one of the very important concept. Uh, uh, Create external table as select. So using this, so what you can do, you can even query, you can store the query results as well. I mean, once you get the data, you can store the data again in the file. Getting what I'm trying to say? You can store the data, you can read the data, also you can write the data as well. Okay, and import data from Azure Blob Storage, Azure Data Lake Storage, and store it in dedicated SQL pool. So what I'm doing in the dedicated SQL pool, how can I use the external table? I can read the data, then I can I can store the data into the dedicated SQL pool. Okay, in the dedicated SQL pool, you can you can store the data, right? Basically, so what I can do, I can create external table which points to same location. I can just simply read it and write it into the database. All right, so that is external table. So external table is always a logical table. It does not have any data. It just points to the data which is available into the storage location. So you can see it as a interview question or your exam question.
Question like poly-based script and the external script are same or?
A polybase is a method which loads the data. We'll talk about it. It's a method which loads the data, which writes the data from one location to another location. That will see.
The format syntax is similar external data source file. The syntax following for external table creation is similar to poly-based table.
Polybase is actually, yeah, almost same, but polybase is a method actually. We'll see that. So polybase is a method where you'll do series of steps and write the data. Same kind of. So what are the steps we have? What is the steps whenever you create a external table? As I was saying, so data source, you need to create the data source. You need to create the file format. You can create the table, right? So what is the data source we have? If you remember that in the previous step, I created an external data source, right? So external data source specifies the location of the storage account where it is available. Okay, and external file format, same way, it talks about the format in which the data is available in the storage location, right? And then you create the finally the table you will create. Okay, you'll create the external data source, external file format, and external table. So if you see here, 1 second.
These external tables we can do SQL querying only.
Sorry?
This extra table creating everything. We are doing with SQL querying only.
Yeah.
SQL. We can write and we can read. You said we can modify existing data.
You're saying existing data can we modify? You're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can read and write the data, right? You can read and write the data. Yes, you can do that.
Okay.
So here, see here, there is some data which I took from one of the example. So that's what I was saying. If you remember that, I was saying that you can read the data which is available anywhere in the world in any location. Okay, in the Azure. So I have a Azure data. So I have something like COVID data I have. Okay, so which is available in one of the storage location somewhere in the public access with the public access. Okay, now I
think are you sharing the screen? I mean, we are seeing the still PPT.
Oh, okay, sorry about that. Yeah, so I took an example over here. Okay, I took an example from one of the available example. So here I created an external data source, and yes, and external data source, external table I used in one of my previous company application, where the database are around like 10 to 20 sources were there, where we were getting tons of tables. Okay, so what we have done is we created external table to read the data and perform all the operations and store the data into the next Synapse SQL database. So I used the same format, like I created external data source, external file format, and created the data. So here external data source I created. There is something called this COVID cases. If you see this here, there is COVID cases which is available in the worldwide. And the same way, you will find tons of data available in the data storage location, and which with the public access. So you can take any example, or you can create your own database like trips data. For the same trips data, like I created a external data source, right? So you can create an external data source here. So I created a external data source here. Okay, create external data source name with then the location. That's it, nothing else. The same thing which I was showing earlier as well. So I uploaded a file I created, right? The same way I can upload a file and I can create external data source, or you can create a data source which is available with the public access, or if you have access on any other location. Okay, now see here, how do we create a file format? Same thing, create external file format. The format name, you can give any format name, Parquet format, CSV format with format type. So here what you're trying to say is, you're saying that the data which I'm going to read, which is available in the Parquet format, that you're saying that. So otherwise, if it is the data is there in the CSV format, you can say CSV format. Getting what I'm trying to do here?
Yes.
Yes.
Any
Yes.
confusion?
Yeah.
It is very simple. I'm creating an external data source. I'm creating external file format. That's it. Okay. Now I don't have any database for now. So what I don't have any table. So simply what I'll do, I can run the data as we did in the last session, last script. Okay, I can query the data, and using, so instead of this querying the data each and every time, what I'll do, I will write the I'll point this data into a table. So same thing, external, create external table and the table name, then whatever the columns are available, simply I will create all these columns. Okay, simply I'll create all the columns based on the data type. The only difference between the regular table and external table will be, the external table is logical table, and the example will be create external table. External is the extra keyword that you need to remember. Apart from that, it is very simple that you need to create the what is the data source. That's it. Okay, see here, while reading the data, what you are doing here, you are giving the data source here. So I'm mentioning the same data source, and using the, you are giving the actual location of the file, the container name, the location name. Here also I'm giving the container name, the file name, and you are saying that what is the format, Parquet format. Okay, instead of using format Parquet, I created a format, external file format. Then I'm using over here file format. Okay, now once you create this file format, you can use this file format in any table, for any table. Okay, you're suppose in one of the location there is some data and you want to create an external table on top of it, then you can use the same format and you can use the same data source, and only you can keep changing the location as long as it's available in the same storage account. Are you with me?
Yes. Okay.
Right, are you with me?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that's it. So I created this table.